Is existentialism a bad word for Christians? We're suspicious of a lot of words and ideas because we've been taught that they are bad in some way. I found that existentialism is one of those words. But the basic idea behind existentialism is actually helpful for us. So the word existentialism contains the word exist. And at the most basic level, existentialism is trying to answer the question, what is the meaning of our existence? In order to get at this question, let's look at Aristotle. He was one of the most famous philosophers ever. He came up with a lot of ideas that we use today, like classifying animals and plants in very detailed systems. Aristotle gave us a strategy for answering questions like, why does something exist? Things exist for reasons. Specifically, Aristotle gives 4 reasons or causes of things. Let's use a butter knife as an example. The first cause of something is the material cause, or the material makeup of something. For a butter knife, the formal cause is the metal that it's made of. The second cause of the butter knife is the formal cause. This is the design of the thing, the flatness, the blade, the knifeness of it. The third cause is the efficient cause, the primary source of change. The efficient cause of a song would be the songwriter, so the efficient cause of the knife would be the knife factory. The fourth cause is the final cause, the sake for which the thing is made. So the final cause of the butter knife is to get butter on bread. This seems pretty simple, but let's think of a real-life scenario. What happens when I need to tighten a screw on the leg of a desk, but I don't have a screwdriver? Well, if you're like me, you go to the silverware drawer, pull out a butter knife, and get to work. I might even throw the butter knife in the toolbox afterwards and decide that from now on it will live as a screwdriver. So what happens if the butter knife develops consciousness and gets all existential? The butter knife starts to feel that something just doesn't feel right. It lives in a toolbox with wrenches and hammers and pliers, but it feels out of place. What if it starts asking the why am I here question and looks to Aristotle for answers? Let's say it is most concerned with its final cause. What was it made for? So this butter knife is a good candidate for a red pill moment. Let's say a Morpheus character offered the butter knife a peek behind the curtain to see a clear picture of reality. Let's say along with this revelation, the butter knife was given a choice to return to the silverware drawer rather than the toolbox. Once the butter knife understands that its final cause is to spread butter on bread and not to tighten screws, it has reached an existential moment. The existentialist would say that the butter knife can only be authentic when it decides to return to its home and start spreading butter. Existentialism, of course, deals with people and not silverware. 2 different existentialist philosophers saw us as butter knives in the toolbox. Yes, we are doing things like tightening the sides of a bookcase, but our real purpose is something completely different. These philosophers, however, had 2 very different ideas about what the human final cause really was. Friedrich Nietzsche thought that his neighbors had been living in the world of Christianity for the last 2,000 years, but like the scratched and dented butter knife, people had the sneaking suspicion that something wasn't right. Nietzsche's red pill moment came when he tried to convince people that there really was no God. Nietzsche's diagnosis of the death of God wasn't an indictment of a specific real murder, but a statement of the way things simply were. He thought that people shouldn't act like they were created by God for some divine final cause. Living according to Christian morals, according to Nietzsche, simply kept people living inauthentic lives. Going against the accepted norms generated feelings of shame because people were trying to live up to an arbitrarily false Christian standard. So existentialism in Nietzsche's world meant being faced with the decision of either living a false life of unlivable, guilt-inducing Christian morality or embracing the true final cause and follow geniuses like Nietzsche himself as bearers of light and truth. So it's no wonder that many Christians want to deny this kind of existentialism, which is actually nihilism. This, however, isn't the whole story. Existentialism, in fact, began not with Nietzsche, but with Soren Kierkegaard, a great Danish thinker. Like Nietzsche, Kierkegaard also thought that cultural Christianity was a wasteland of inauthenticity. Kierkegaard looked at so-called Christians and realized they were simply living as good citizens of Christendom, a political rather than religious organization. C. Stephen Evans has said, Kierkegaard's attack on Christendom should not be viewed merely as a rejection of an established state church. It should be seen, rather, as a rejection of any attempt to identify Christianity with a particular human culture or society. And in Kierkegaard's own words, no, official Christianity is not the Christianity of the New Testament. Anybody can see that merely by casting a fleeting but impartial glance at the Gospels and then looking at what we call Christianity. Kierkegaard also says, the situation is this. If everyone around defines himself as being a Christian, just like the other, then no one, if it is looked at in this way, is really confessing Christ. In other words, Kierkegaard is saying, in a world where everyone is Christian, no one is Christian. So Kierkegaard's red pill moment, his existential challenge, dares a cultural Christian to recognize that his final cause is not to live in a culture as just a decent human being. A Christian's final cause, however, is to exercise radical faith in a God who is not a predictable, safe, and polite member of society. But this God is the kind of God who would command Abraham to offer his son as a human sacrifice to show ultimate faith. Existentialism, then, has its origin not in Nietzsche's ultimate nihilistic announcement of God's death. It is, in fact, rooted in a more daring and radical warning against living a Christian life without Christ. So next time you hear someone use the word existentialism, slow down and use your brain to think rather than theirs.